Hello, everybody. We've been out of town, so we haven't had a chance to talk about a couple movies. But a couple weeks ago, we watched Space Jam: A New Legacy. So, Aiden, what's the plot of Space Jam: A New Legacy?
LeBron James, his son is a fucking dork and makes video games instead of playing basketball. They get invited to WB because Warner Brothers wants to put them in Batman or something. And there's an AI named Don Cheadle, played by Don Cheadle, who runs the WB algorithm and writes all their movies, which is fitting because that's how their movies feel like they're designed. And he's like, okay, Michael Jordan, if you don't want to be in Batman, then I'll teleport you into the fucking Looney Tunes world and play a basketball game with you eventually, after like 30 minutes of filler. And then they play basketball.
Otherwise, you lose your child.
Yeah, otherwise your kid, whatever. Connor, what'd you think of Space Jam: A New Legacy?
I thought it was pretty bad, truthfully. Look, I haven't seen the original Space Jam, so I don't know if it's better. I mean, I seen it years ago on Cartoon Network.
But it's a lot better.
The thing about this movie is the Warner Brothers algorithm thing is kind of funny in an ironic sense, but most of this movie feels like there's not much of a plot here. LeBron James just goes into the game, into Looney Tunes, then they go to like The Matrix and Batman and all this shit,
so
and then they
can
play
have cheap,
a predictable game
parodies.
of basketball where LeBron has to learn to embrace the fun side of basketball instead of the serious technical side of basketball. And he learns to let his child be how he wants to be, which is a video game designer. And it's a very predictable story. It's paint by numbers. This movie's like 2 hours long.
Yes, it is.
And most of it feels like filler. Like, this movie probably could have been 45 minutes. No, really, though. Like,
yeah,
he goes to Looney
happens.
Tunes. Him and Bugs make a team in a montage that lasts 25 minutes.
Yep.
They dick around for 30 minutes. The start is bloated. It's just really bloated. It looks generic. Like, it just looks... I don't know. I just don't like how it looks. I'll put it that way.
It looks fucking gross.
And, you know, you have all these memes and stuff to appeal to the older crowd that's going to watch this out of nostalgia, like the Big Chungus.
Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty shows up. Like, you have all these things to, like, appeal to people who I don't think the primary demographic is, which I think is children, supposed to be children, but it feels more like something like for 90s kids nostalgia and like what these 90s kids like today, like Rick and Morty and the Big Chungus. It's a very Reddit-based movie. And I just feel like it kind of misses the mark as a children's movie. It's just bland and not very funny, even from a sense of like children. And I feel like the 90s nostalgia people they're bringing in, I would hope are gonna see through Rick and Morty, or saw through Rick and Morty and Big Chungus. Like,
everyone's roasting this movie for being fucking...
But it's just lame. That's the best way to describe the film. Is just lame.
I think lame is far too kind.
I mean, it's bad, but it's like...
I'd call it outright terrible.
It mostly suffers from being bloated and kind of just failing to deliver on the premise. Like, it would have been better... Now, I don't know anything about the original Space Jam except they play basketball. But, like, why not just try to recapture Space Jam instead of, we'll call it Space Jam, but then it's really just a 90s circle jerk fest with Matrix references and 90s kids' favorite new cartoon, Rick and Morty, and all this shit that's just stupid. I don't know. So, Aiden, what did you think of
It's
Space Jam?
fucking terrible. It's awful. It's horrendous. Everything about it. First off, LeBron James is a terrible actor. Didn't expect much. He's just some basketball guy. But also, they stuck him in the most awful environment for an actor, where he's just standing in front of a green screen talking to nothing. and he's bad on top of that. So it feels like shit.
Well,
Don Cheadle's not trying. He can act, but he's not.
The family, too, I want to point out, we're like, they're not doing that bad considering they're LeBron James' real family.
And
Then when
turns
you
out
find
they're
out
just
they're
bad
professional
actors.
actors, you're like, okay, so they are actually pretty bad.
Yeah, most of this movie is just a gigantic advertisement for HBO Max.
And Nike.
The entire segment where they have to assemble the team is just endless movie parodies.
Casablanca, literally any shit you can buy on HBO Max.
Casablanca, The
Rick and
Matrix,
Morty.
Rick and Morty. They go to the DC superhero world and then also have a separate segment based on Wonder Woman 84. There's fucking just constant references to things WB owns. And then during the final basketball game, in perhaps the most distracting decision I've ever seen in a movie, they load up the audience with every DC character and property ever. So when you're supposed to be looking at the stupid basketball game that's boring and long and awful, you're just like looking in the background and you see like Pennywise from It wandering around in a children's movie and fucking like whatever.
Alex from A Clockwork Orange.
Iron Giant, King Kong, they just loaded up. This movie's nothing but just wall-to-wall references with no substance. And the parodies are just awful. Like, the joke in the Matrix parody is that grandma is old. And also the Matrix. Remember the Matrix? Remember Rick and Morty? Yeah, it's horrible. It's overly long and bloated.
Matrix parody
The
dead art, too.
The kid's video game looks fucking awful, and they always talk about how great of a programmer he is, but there's like a glitch that deletes your character somehow, and then they use that at the end to kill Don Cheadle, and Bugs Bunny dies, but then he's just immediately back, but he's in the real world. Somehow that's not explained. Bugs Bunny escaped the fucking WB computer matrix and got into the real world with LeBron James, and he's just back alive with no explanation. And it's like, what is even happening? It's just all over the place. The basketball thing isn't even fun. In the first movie, you know, people are just getting like smashed with hammers and set on fire and shit. And the first movie's not good. Like, it's still a bad movie, but it's a lot better than this. And this one, for whatever reason, they go from ugly, cheap-looking 2D animation to 3D, and they have all the Looney Tunes become 3D, and they look even worse than the 2D ones somehow, which already look really cheap, and like they look like cheap Flash with a bunch of in-between auto-generated frames and stuff. And then they turn 3D and it's just a fucking nightmare. And then there's like these other real basketball players who get turned into monsters. I don't know anything about basketball, so who the fuck they are had no impact on me, but they get turned into some of the worst monsters
the guy with
ever.
The unibrow.
They get,
From the
they get
Zeitgeist.
turned into like the Monster Squad or whatever the fuck it's called. And they're all also horrible CGI creatures that have really boring powers that they use to try to make the basketball thing seem exciting, but it's just like dull, long, not fun. And then Don Cheadle turns into a creepy, uncanny valley version of himself for no reason. Just have it be regular Don Cheadle.
Yeah, you'd think.
He goes from being Don Cheadle to being CGI Don Cheadle for no reason. It's fucking weird. Yeah, it's atrocious. It's really hard to watch. It's embarrassing. Special shout out to the notorious PIG rap,
Oh,
where Porky
forgot
has a
about
4-minute rap scene, and then the characters stand around for another 2 minutes talking about how fire Porky's sick bars were.
You're gonna have to pirate the movie just to show that clip when you edit
I'm
this.
sure someone's put it on YouTube.
I'm sure.
It's horrible.
Notorious
It's
PIG.
fucking terrible. At the point, the notorious PIG part is where I was just like finished. I rolled over. I just put my face on the ground and I was done. I survived the Rick and Morty, and then it just got to that, and I was like, oh, It's really hard to watch. It's
The rap
embarrassing.
was cringe.
It feels like it was made by the boomerest of boomers who are just trying to appeal to the kids with hip references to The Matrix, Casablanca, Rick and Morty, Big Chungus. Yeah, it's dog shit. Connor, would you recommend Space Jam: A New Legacy?
No. Aiden, would you recommend Space Jam?
Hell no. This movie sucks.